Welcome to today's event, UK EDUday, the impact of using Microsoft Teams as a standalone digital learning environment. Today's event is being recorded on behalf of the Microsoft Corporation. If you do not consent to being part of a recorded session, please disconnect your line at this time. The recording will be available at the same location you used to join today's event. To learn more about the ways you can participate in today's event, please click on the Messages button in the lower left-hand corner of your screen. Feel free to let us know if you are ready to get started by typing in a message and selecting Send. We encourage you to interact by using the Messages panel at any time to ask questions regarding content or to request support. We will do our best to answer all your questions, but due to time constraints, we might not be able to answer all of them during the live event. Your feedback is important. Please take a few minutes to complete a survey that will appear at the end of the event. If you experience any technical difficulties, refresh your browser by pressing Ctrl F5 or the Refresh Now button on the information panel. If this does not resolve the issue, please send in a message and we will be happy to assist. There is also an online test page if you wish to self-support. Simply click the Help button in the Information tab. And now I'd like to introduce your host for today's event. Claire Riley is the Higher Education Engagement Manager for Microsoft. Claire, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Heather. Sorry about that. Thank you so much. That was a wonderful introduction. And welcome to all of our guests today who are joining us for this fantastic webinar. We know we've got 498 people registered for the event, and they've come from all over the world, although the centre of gravity is in the UK, in our colleges and universities. And I'm absolutely delighted that you're all with us today on what is a lovely sunny day in London. I don't know what it's like where you are. The topic of the day today, the webinar today, is all about using Teams as a standalone digital learning environment. It's an extension of our series about remote learning with Teams, and the people who are going to be presenting the session today come from one of the showcase colleges that Microsoft is proud to work with. That's the SGS Col, or the South Gloucestershire and Stroud College, and there are three people who are going to be presenting with you today. And if Simon can move the slide on, I can show you the pictures. So we've got Simon himself, who is the head of digital and professional development. We've got Jake and Lee, who are both deputy heads of teaching and learning at the college. And with Alan and myself, we've got Melody, who's going to help us with the Q&As. So the way the session will run is Simon will kick off. We'll do some Q&As about his section, and then we'll do the two sessions from Jake and Lee, and we'll have some Q&As at the end. So if you've got any questions at all, remember to pop them in the little box on the bottom left of your screen, and we'll do our best to surface the sessions that we've got. But right now, I know this is going to be an amazing session, and I'd like to hand over to Simon to kick it off for us. Off you go.
Hello, thanks, Claire. Yeah, this is very exciting. We're really happy to be here. So I'm gonna talk to you for about 10 minutes only. I'm going to talk about our adopting Teams as our digital learning environment from a cross-college perspective. And we moved entirely away from Moodle in September last year, and that was quite a big step for us. We don't really have all the time to cover everything, to cover the whole journey that we actually went through. But what we do want to do today is to really focus on the impacts that has had. So that hopefully gives you something to take away. I'd just like to frame it a little bit to begin with. First of all, we've got 6 campuses. We've got 6 campuses. Those 6 campuses cover 3 counties. We've got about 900 staff, roughly about 4,000 full-time learners, about 2,500 apprentices, and many thousands part-time students. So what that means is that we're not a huge institution like some of the big HE universities, but we are a big institution, and that size makes change difficult. So that was quite an important thing to consider. The change management process that we went through over the last 2.5 years was really an important part of this journey, really. And as I said, that we shifted our entire full-time provision into Teams in September last year. So why shift platforms at all? Why go through that pain? I mean, that's a very important question, really, isn't it? So I think the key thing here to remember is that we want to improve the human experience. Now, I've heard people talk about this before, but I think it's a really important aspect of what happens. And how do we do that? I mean, what does that actually look like for a college or for a university? So I think this is what it looks like. You can break it down into two sections. The first thing is we really need to make teachers' jobs easier. That is a really key focus. I ask myself that. Hopefully, I ask myself this question every single day because it's really what's important to me. And how do we do that? Well, you can provide great training and support for teachers. You can provide reliable kit. You can give them good software. But I think importantly, and it's kind of linked to the point that I made before, is that we really want to try to kind of reduce. We want to reduce all the applications that staff are using. And how do we do that? Well, we've got this technique that we like to use. It's kind of called the funneling technique, where we really want to reduce the amount of applications that staff are using, because if you've got staff using lots of applications, there's a lot of clutter, and what we really want to do is get rid of all that clutter, and we want to focus them. And if we can manage to focus staff, then I think what we end up doing is we really give them the opportunity to just focus on a small amount of applications. And if they can do that, what happens is you get increased efficiency and they work more effectively. And that is a really important aspect of what we do. In terms of the students, I think that's a really important, obviously we want to create a high quality experience for them. That's really important. We also want to make sure that, that we kind of give them real world experiences. Our central jobs as educators is really to prepare students for life when they leave us. That's what we have to do. We can do that in lots and lots of different ways. But one thing we can do is give them real world experiences. And also another really important aspect of this is that, students live on their mobiles. I mean, I'm not going to touch on this very much because Lee will talk about this, but we have to give them a mobile experience. And Moodle was not really was not a good mobile experience for our students. So I will frame this a little bit. I'm going to talk a little bit about what happened over the last 2.5 years. So we did have a good starting point, which has really enabled us to kind of, we're in a very strong position to be ready for this kind of shift into remote learning with the closing of colleges, with all these issues with COVID-19. And some of the key things that gave us that great starting point was this. So a really important aspect of us shifting into teams is that, we use PowerShell to create all our full-time teams centrally, and that is linked to our LMS data. That's really important. We did run a pilot from September 2018 to September 2019, but actually, when we shifted the entire full-time provision into teams, it was really important that we managed that data, because it was not an experiment anymore. It is central to everything that we do. So we have to have accuracy. And so the membership of the teams mirror our data in our LMS, which is Pro Solution. And when we did this, again, we had a great change management program in place. And so when we came to do this in September 2019, we had basically 100% engagement in teams within the first 30 days. And so that was a really positive start. If you've got engagement, people using teams, it's very easy to build on top of that. We had an extensive face-to-face training program. I mean, I'm not going to touch on that. I'm going to leave Jake to talk about that. And this is really quite important. Teams it's not just about digital learning for us. It's across our entire organization. So all our corporate and curriculum teams, they all have departmental teams, and that is where all the communication and collaboration happens across the entire organization. It's central to what we do now, and not just about digital learning. So since lockdown, what does the engagement look like for us? So again, I think I'm going to talk about the impacts here, and I think there's some really important things here. So first of all, we had nearly 5,000 active users in Teams. So this is essentially our entire full-time provision and our entire full-time provision and all our staff as well. So this was quite an impressive number, I think. So we've had since lockdown, we've had a combined average of over 30,000 chat and channel messages, and that doesn't even include calls. If we start including calls, then that adds it up to many thousands on top of that as well. So that's per day. That's not per week, per day, over 30,000. So that is really a really powerful number, I think. So we've had about 1,750 webinars. That's again a very positive thing. And this is, I think, is really important. You know, I've had loads of conversations with teachers since lockdown, and the teachers have said to us that actually in some of the sessions, attendance was even better than in the classroom sessions. And, you know, this really bodes well, I think, for the future. I mean, I think this really shows that we have hit like a paradigm shift here. I mean, this is for all the you know, the issues that we have with COVID, it's actually for educational institutions, it's a massive opportunity. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity to really shift things and to change the way that education looks. And I think it's really important that we do that. And we obviously didn't have our entire, you know, we did have some gaps, and there were some learners that were not attending, and so obviously we had a process in place where they were reported through the normal reporting mechanisms, and Safeguarding picked those up. This is a slide for all you IT administrators out there. You'll recognise this. This is pulled off the Teams admin utility in Office 365. So again, I just wanted to use this as an illustration because graphs are pretty good at illustrating things, aren't they? So this is our 30-day view. Easter is right in the middle there. You can see the flat line. That's the 2 weeks of Easter. You can see the engagement we had in Teams the week before. And we were quite worried about after Easter what engagement was going to look like. But as you can see, it pretty much came back to where it was before the Easter break, where we had those 2 weeks of lockdown. And then actually it's upticked again. So, you know, that week, last week, which is that week that you can't see, that's actually gone back to where we were kind of before the Easter break. So it's been really positive. And that's been down to a lot of the things that the teachers have been doing, which Lee and Jake will talk about in a bit more detail for you. I really love this graph. So this is a longer view, the 90-day view. And you can see there you've got January and February, and then you've got the February break, which is quite low towards the left-hand side. That's that flat line. But I suppose what I would like to illustrate here is that you see all those little bumps of weeks before lockdown. We're actually quite proud of those little bumps. Those bumps represented good engagement for us. And obviously you can always improve, and improvement, you know, you've always got to be striving to be better. But we were quite proud of that. So if you're proud of that, and then you can see the kind of jump that we had from the lockdown. There's the week leading into lockdown, which is that uptick, and then the two big bumps there are the 2 weeks before Easter, where we were in lockdown, and then again we've jumped back up again after Easter. So we're having really positive engagement in Teams. I'm just going to close here. I'm just going to show you I'm going to show you 4 teams that we've implemented from a cross-college perspective that I think have been really impactful, and you might be able to take something away from these back to your organisations. And then I'm going to hand over to Jake and Lee to look at things in a bit more detail. So this is the first one. It's called SGS Students Plus. This is a team that has got all of our full-time 16 to 18 learners in it. So it's about 3,500, I think about 3,800 students in here. So we manage the membership of this team using PowerShell. Again, it's very important that we manage that and that it's linked to our central data. You know, tying up all your data, I think, is a really important part of what you should do, certainly from an MIS perspective. So it is managed. The students are in it. If you're a full-time learner with us, 16 to 18, you're in this team. You cannot leave it. We've obviously had students try and leave the team, but then overnight the PowerShell script pulls them right back in again, and then they generally get a message saying welcome to the team again. So it's quite and sometimes it can be quite amusing. So yes, you can see some of the channels we have. This is kind of our go-to place to communicate with students now. It's only been going for what is it, 6 months, but we've seen a massive uptick in terms of like student engagement with this, because they're starting to understand now that this is the go-to place for all kind of things that are to do with the college. So this is where they go now. This one, the HE student experience, this is a similar one, but this again has had it's managed by PowerShell. All the HE students are in here, but the student experience team have really found this as a really powerful way to kind of communicate with the HE cohort at large, and it's just been a really, really positive thing. This is my personal favorite, SGS Gallimaufry. So this is a team that we've created for all staff. Now, if you are an employee at SGS College, you are automatically in this team. Again, the same as with the SGS Students Plus, you cannot leave it. You are a prisoner in the team. And again, we've had staff try to leave the team and just get pulled back in overnight, which again, then I just check that and then send them a nice email saying, you can't, you work for us. This is your team. This is where you get your information. So it's important to start creating habits. So people check this now. And again, over the last 6 months, we've seen massive engagement with this, and it's turned into a really positive kind of team with lots of interaction from lots of different areas of the college. You can see the kind of if you look on the left hand side there, the kind of channels that we have. And my personal favorite is this compliments and brilliance one. So historically, compliments would be sent off to the compliments and complaints team. It would be logged. And that would be the end of it, really. But now what we do is we use this channel to log it. So any compliment that comes in, we put it in this channel, and you can sing from the hit. You can ping anybody you want in it. And if it's a really good compliment, then you can ping the entire team, so that the whole staff body get to see these compliments. And it's been a really, really positive experience for everybody. The last one is SGS ActiveFit. So again, ActiveFit is the kind of the physical fitness channel for staff. It's a great program, and they've got a channel in Gallimaufry that they use to promote. But since the remote learning, since lockdown, they created their own channel, and now they deliver training sessions twice a day live to the staff, to any member of staff that wants to do it. This is not governed by PowerShell. You've got to self-elect to get into this one. But there's been a massive uptake in this, and staff have really, really engaged with this. It's been amazing to see all the communications on their various channels about this, and watching people get involved in in Pilates and HIIT sessions, whatever there's a very wide range. So it's been a really, really positive team, that one. So that's about it for me. Again, just a snippet really from a cross-college perspective. I just want to close by saying, there's no doubt about it, and we all know this, that the most important thing in an organization is the people. The people are key to any organization. Good people means good organization. But teams has now become the glue that holds the people together for us. It is everything that we communicate through that. We do it much better than we used to before, and it is really everything. As I said, it's the glue that holds those key people together. That's it for me. Claire, I think I'm going to hand back to Claire here, and I think she's got questions, if there are any questions. I know that was a whirlwind tour, and I'm sure there are plenty of questions. Claire, is back over to you.
Just jumping off mute. Actually, I think Alan and Melody are going to ask the questions. So we've had some great questions coming in. Do you want to kick off, Melody?
All right, we've got this first question. Any particular reason that South Gloucestershire and Stroud did not use school data sync to create the teams?
That was a yes. I mean, it was a preference from the IT director and his team. We did get the option to use the school data sync, but we actually think that using PowerShell is an easier process, and we can certainly manage it better moving forward. We can control the teams better in PowerShell than we could in student data sync, and it's an easier process.
Great. And Alan, have you got a question?
Yeah, so I'm going to roll a couple into one here, Simon, if that's okay. So this was related to your intranet. So have you replaced your intranet with Teams, i.e. not using SharePoint as your intranet?
So no, we still have an intranet, and that is still is SharePoint. But what we don't have anymore is we use the intranet for kind of shared documents. So, for instance, if the finance team have got shared documents, professional development, the shared documents, we still hold those on there, but we're definitely shifting away from it. It used to be that curriculum teams all had a presence on SharePoint, but now we've shifted them all off SharePoint. So it's a much more trimmed down. So all the curriculum teams have Microsoft Teams now, and they would use the SharePoint site that's associated with their team to store all the kind of departmental files. So we've shifted most of it into Teams, but we still have an intranet.
There's some good questions here which are coming up perhaps for Jake and Lee as well. But Melody, do you want to go for another one?
Right, here's one. Do your academic teams have a fixed structure, or is it left open for the departments?
Good question. We have a recommended. So we went through a very extensive training program when we launched, and so we obviously gave them some pretty firm guidance, but we weren't prescriptive. So yes, there's a rough guide, but if they feel that something that works better for them, then they've been allowed to do it. But most of them follow a similar kind of path. But we did give them the freedom, yeah.
Brilliant. And perhaps one last question from you, Alan.
Sure. I think the one that's come up is to do with live events and also stream videos. So are you using live events, and do you use stream for your videos?
So yes, we do use stream. We haven't used live events yet, but we are going to. We haven't been licensed for it, but we are going to get live events. It was a quick turnaround, wasn't it, to get this whole remote learning process. So we are just using kind of the Microsoft meeting spaces, but it's been working well. And as we all know now, there's some massive developments happening from Microsoft in terms of the hands up. I think the 9 screen feature has just been released, but we weren't using live events for our for the curriculum webinars now.
Fantastic. There's so many questions coming in. I can't believe it. There are really some really good questions here. But what I suggest we do is, if we move on and move to Jake and Lee's sections of the webinar, we can come to a Q&A at the end, and we'll know how much time we've got. Answer as many as we can and follow people up afterwards. So do you want to introduce Jake?
Okay, here we are. Yes. This is my lovely colleague, Jake Barnes. Her and Lee really are the ones that get things done around our college, that's for sure. So I'm going to hand over to her, and she's going to talk to you, go into a bit more detail about the staff perspective and the staff experience since we've gone into Teams as our DLE. Okay, Jake, over to you.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you very much for that introduction. So, as Simon mentioned and as Claire's mentioned, I'm a deputy head of teaching and learning, but with a digital focus. But I also, in the college, I teach maths as well. So I teach a functional skills class and a GCSE class. And I'm going to just talk to you about the staff experience, primarily curriculum, of using Teams as a digital learning environment, with an emphasis on the impact of this, both before and during this period of remote working. So, as Simon mentioned, we rolled Teams out as our standalone DLE at the start of this academic year, alongside a comprehensive and extensive training programme for all curriculum staff. Over the course of this year, all full-time courses have been using Teams as their collaboration and communication hubs for their classes. But at the beginning of March, we anticipated that we would potentially have to close for a period of time. Not everyone in the college agreed, but we persevered regardless. So we began rapidly planning and delivering the guidance and training that curriculum staff needed to provide the basis for remote teaching and learning. So this was 90-minute sessions for all curriculum staff, and we just managed to train all departments down to the wire the last day before we were shut down. So staff are still continuing to learn, as we're going to see a little bit further on. So we decided that we would take a 3-step approach to introduce staff to this idea. Step 1 simply replicated the elements already being used by the majority of curriculum teams, and it laid out the minimum expectations that we wanted all courses to meet. So the second step was for staff to produce recorded lessons with interactive elements such as quizzes and other formative assessments that could be created and watched asynchronously at a time that suited both staff and learners. And the third step was to deliver live webinars. And we trained staff to do this, but with the understanding that it wasn't expected of them, but it was up to them if they felt able to do this, and also if they felt it would be accessible and beneficial to their learners. When we were planning and delivering this training, though, we had little feel for the reality of the situation. We didn't really know what it was going to be like, but we did know certain things, and we did know what we believed in, and we used this to frame our approach. As I said, all full-time courses were already using Teams to a greater or lesser degree, but there was a large range of ability and confidence levels across the staff and student bodies. The extent to which Teams and different aspects or features were being used reflected these varying skill levels. A handful of staff had actually delivered some lessons remotely, and their experiences were shared and they helped to inform the strategy. But what we did do was we trusted our staff. We trusted their total professionalism to do their best, and they knew that would be done without reproach. So we knew that there would be some issues, some IT issues. There might be some access to hardware issues or internet connection issues. But the reality is such that some barriers were not even considered. So, household sharing spaces, creating cramped living and working conditions, juggling work, homeschooling or caring for others, and the list goes on, doesn't it? So we were a little in the dark, but our collective previous experiences and our approach allowed staff the flexibility to choose when and how teaching, learning and assessment took place. This was really, really been important. And the varied skill set and tools that they have been given have allowed them to become so adaptable and to problem solve. And it really has helped to create a culture of sort of autonomy and trust and honesty. And I think it's empowered teachers, and it's just supported them with all of these many, many roles that they're juggling. So very recently, really recently, we sent out a survey to learners just asking them to review the remote learning that they were part of just for the 2 weeks prior to the Easter holidays. And these initial responses were amazing, and this just showed the wide range of different activities that had been undertaken, just ranging from sort of one-to-one chats with teachers or watching a recorded presentation of a lesson to joining a live webinar. And if we remember that these live webinars were actually the top level of our three-step approach, the survey so far is showing that they were actually experienced by over 60% of those surveyed just in the first 2 weeks of lockdown, which is amazing. And the benefits that learners have detailed from taking part in these, in their opinions, the two best bits were simply being able to ask questions and to get feedback from teachers. But Lee's going to discuss the impact on learners in a much more detail, but I just wanted to highlight some of the comments from the questionnaires from students. So these are just showing that many learners are reporting being a bit more productive at home, actually. They enjoy the live aspects of webinars. They're able to interact with teachers and classmates. It's a bit boring at home, but it's not the same as being in college and learning in a classroom or other dedicated learning environments, and it can't replace it. It shouldn't replace it. And on the whole, our learners are missing college. They really are. They're not getting the same experiences, but they are getting a great deal under the circumstances, and they and our staff, they're just so glad to have a system and an approach in place which enables not just teaching, learning and assessment to continue, but it also supports all those other aspects of education, such as, the social experiences, being able to encourage and support learners, and for them to still be able to grow and develop and flourish and learn new skills. I would say, though, for many, it hasn't been easy, even with the training and with the reliability of the system and with the ongoing support that they're given. It's been important, I think, for us to recognise this and that, our expectations are realistic and they're appropriate. As you know, as we know, as everyone knows, teachers put their students' needs very often before their own. And we are seeing staff are often undertaking activities which stretch them really to the very limits of their own abilities. But they're continuing to learn new skills. They're continuing to overcome barriers along the way. I do see really just jumping into teams and seeing having conversations with staff, that there really has been a sense of levelling between staff and students, and that they're all growing in confidence and ability, and they seem to be sort of facing the journey together. They're honest with each other about what's working and what's not, and what they like, what they don't like. Learners is helping to shape the way that the lessons are running. There's been some amazing things going on. So as I said earlier, I've also been part of the cross-college English and Maths team this year, and I just wanted to share some of the positive impacts that Teams has had on this department and the delivery of English and Maths prior to and post-lockdown. So as English and Maths cross most other curriculum areas, having such a cohesive and collaborative system, really, such as Teams, it's been transformational. Having just one place for all the communication and the resources for announcements, homework, feedback, student work, well, the list goes on. It's all on a system that Simon's, as he showed, has just been embraced by the vast majority of staff and students, really from the very, very start of the academic year. And it's a place that connects people. So, English and Maths specialists are in a team with their students. They have their support tutors in there as well. There may be some pastoral tutors in there as well, and they're all in a focus group. They're all there for sort of a shared topic. So post lockdown, all staff teams really, all their sites they've become hubs for their meetings, and they share documents, they collate resources, plan and discuss. But for the cross-college English and Maths team, it's also meant that the resources that they're creating, they're sharing them so easily across a whole network. As Simon said, we're on 6 different sites across 3 different counties. All of these resources are being created by deliverers in their own homes, shared by others, adapted if necessary. Workloads are being reduced. Learners are then provided with a very, very consistent approach, the same high quality presentations and practice tests and homework and quizzes. I do see that these, I think the teams were strong and collaborative anyway, but they're just becoming stronger and stronger. In English and Maths particularly, I think this is evidenced by such a collective and shared responsibility, not just for the learners or for the college, but also for the wider communities. So this week, we're just launching the SGS College's home tutoring programme, which is sort of aims to support parents and carers and guardians in their new roles as home teachers of English and Maths. And this team really provides the perfect platform for a course like this. It's got links to resources, Q&A can happen in there, there's live demonstrations, there are daily webinars, video and explanations, and just that sense that somebody else is out there and doing the same, and the mutual support that you get from that. So staff are also using Teams for a range of different things. The list's ever evolving, all the different activities with each other and with learners. It's not something that we've told them to do or asked them to do, it's just evolving. And obviously, a couple of weeks after Easter, grades are being predicted, things are changing, and we're seeing changes in how they're using Teams. So we're now seeing some amazing progression classes taking place. Learners are still being engaged, learners are still attending. There is interactive and engaging bridging work being set. Not just internally, but also with external applicants too. So those year 11 students, perhaps who have little to do, they're really starting to look ahead and to look forward to restarting their education. And the staff are producing some really rich materials and resources just to harness this enthusiasm and to keep them entertained and in learning. So we've had almost 5 weeks now of remote delivery either side of the Easter holidays. So the experiences that staff have had, they're now able to draw on. and they're evaluating and reflecting on these, and that's really helping them with all of the various scenario planning, and they're using Teams at the heart of this. So departments are now considering how the technology can be used to support and help overcome some of the challenges that we are undoubtedly going to face moving forwards. So as Simon mentioned earlier, it's not all been about work, and we've got a system that lends itself so seamlessly to sharing. There have been a wealth of opportunities for staff to engage in extracurricular activities, and I think all of these things I've done in some way, shape or form, and I've thoroughly enjoyed all of them. So we've had book readings, we've had fitness classes, yoga sessions. They've been recorded. People can watch them and interact with them at different times. Sharing of recipes and their people's hobbies, photos, all the fundraising, competitions, quizzes. The list just keeps going on and on. The activities are being shared among staff and among students. And, it's breaking down barriers as well, and it's building some fantastic relationships across all aspects of the college. And I do feel that we will be stronger. We'll be a stronger college when we get back to something that resembles normality. So staff have also been encouraged to take some time to develop and acquire some new skills and knowledge themselves in a wide range of areas. This started before lockdown. This was something that we've been working on all year, developing some level 2 courses and qualifications for staff, a whole host of different ones. And they're all being fully supported by Teams, and it's ongoing. So Teams is the hub for their resources, for their communication. One of these courses is an IT qualification, and this teaches staff just how to get the best out of Teams, how to use PowerPoint and all of its amazing features and just other key software and tools. We actually launched this last October, and we've been running it since then as a remote learning course. We've been delivering it through live webinars and presentations with video guidance and engaging resources. Sounds very familiar. That's exactly what we're all doing again now. But what it did was it gave staff some really valuable insights into how an online course works. And with all the other staff online courses, they're now using Teams from a learner perspective, and that's just adding to their bank of experiences. So just to conclude and summarise just some of the benefits that we're seeing and the impact of having Teams as our digital learning environment. As we said, it started at the beginning of the academic year, but all of these benefits and impacts have just been highlighted and strengthened further during this sort of new world of remote learning. And although we'd already moved away from Moodle, from the more traditional VLE, remote working has further shifted staff to one system, so there's less use perhaps of email and ProMonitor and other systems. Everything's really been funneled, as Simon said, through Teams. The changes to working practices and the benefits that has brought have been amazing. So it's harder working from home, as everybody knows. It's more time consuming, but having a system that makes us more efficient, speed, ease, organisation, adaptable, flexible, all of those things, it's been amazing. We always knew that even in normal times, Teams would be transformational to people's working practices once they adapted and embraced it. But in this current situation, it really has been a total game changer. Our staff conference last October was the start of a move towards more positive approaches to our work, to ourselves and to each other. And staff have demonstrated this so fabulously in all that they've done, and that they're continuing to do so during such difficult times. I know that there are some SGS staff out there listening, and so a big shout out to you and a big well done. It's been amazing. But this doesn't also apply to staff, it also applies to students. And I'm going to hand over to Lee to talk in more detail about the impact to our learners. Thank you.
Thank you, Jake. My name is Lee Chambers. I am Deputy Head of Teaching and Learning with a digital focus, much like Jake. But my background is within teaching within the Academic Sport Department at SGS College. Next slide, please. Okay, so my section of the presentation looks to detail what the impact of remote delivery has been for our students at SGS College, and I'll give you an insight to what they've been up to. Thank you. Okay, so as Jake previously outlined, our preparation for remote delivery began 2 weeks pre-lockdown. The sessions delivered to staff was specifically designed to have a direct impact on student engagement and productivity. But what probably hasn't been mentioned is the training support given to students in this process as well. Students received a tutorial on remote learning to ensure that they could access platforms and resources and understood their usage. Alongside these face-to-face delivery, instructional videos and how-to guides were created and then uploaded to Teams. Within this stage, we were finding that students were already self-isolating, so we were already missing that face-to-face interaction, so we had to adapt quickly so they could access them remotely. In the final week before lockdown, what we started to see kind of cross-college was a number of lecturers started to run these Teams webinars and kind of remote delivery in preparation. So face-to-face troubleshootings could occur, and any questions that kind of students had could be easily answered before we went down into full lockdown. Next slide, please. So I'm going to give you a number of different examples, and a lot of them are going to be picked from my department, which is Sport and Public Services at SGS College. So in terms of our delivery approach, and I know Jake mentioned this in terms of training, for my department and a number of departments within college, we decided to collapse our timetable, and this looked like a 50% delivery model to face-to-face delivery, which was delivered through webinars, in addition to the uploaded of resources and any ongoing assessments. Within this, new timetables were automatically created through the creation of webinars held in team channels, and then these were easily mapped using the calendar within Teams. Students really liked this in terms of easy viewing, especially within the mobile application, so they could easily see when their lectures were and what their new timetables looked like. New slide, please. Okay, so structure of teams, and there's lots of questions on this already, which is really exciting, good to hear. In terms of our structure of our teams, since launch in September, this has been really important for us as staff and students as well. We want to make this experience within Teams as easy as possible. So the structure is really important. So we need it to be easy to navigate so students can easily see where their relevant content is. An example of this, just on the right-hand side of your screen, is that our units of study or modules are separate channels. For example, within a sports setting here, we've got examples of the modules that they study. And then what we found was when we went to remote learning, we added new channels specifically designed for online learning. So anything that was delivered remotely, students knew to go directly to that channel for any resources. Other lecturers or other members of staff still continue to hold the webinars within channels. It was very much a decision that each individual had to make. There's some really good understanding there in terms of what they were doing. The use of private channels was really beneficial for learners. They're working in small groups, so they could access materials, but also have engagement from members of staff as well, and keep that work separate from other people. They didn't actually need to see what was going on. And then finally, the use of tabs within Teams has been really good for structure and ease of access. So one thing that we have done is we actually have a tab which holds Microsoft Stream, so learners can access webinars where all webinars are placed, so they can go to them straight away, which is a really nice tool and makes it really easy for students to know exactly where to go to find those key webinars and key information. So in communication, this has been a really powerful tool for us at SGS since our launch. We found that communication has improved so much in terms of learners communicating with us as staff. But some of the functions that we use is the one-to-one chats. Learners have used this to check in with lecturers, either being it to do with work. It might be an informal catch-up in terms of well-being. They might be monitoring attendance or just posing direct questions to members of staff. Staff have created group chats for classes. So rather than posting on channels, our members of staff have created group chats for groups or classes or tutor groups, where staff are able to firstly provide key information. Students can then answer or ask any questions. But what we find with this is key information on channels isn't lost. If this information is posted on a channel, then actually sometimes that kind of key information or key notices can be lost within that channel. So the chat function has been used for kind of informal chats. The call function, this has been particularly beneficial to our SEND learners at college. So learners with in-class support workers. What we found is our in-class support workers have been managed to touch base with our learners after webinars have been held, and then kind of pose further questions and check for understanding in that one-to-one chat basis. But I'd strongly recommend to check your safeguarding policy before use. And then finally, the use of announcements and app mentions has been a really powerful tool for us. At college, the use of announcements has been there to actually signpost key information, and then the use of app mentions to target specific either groups or individuals to make sure that they get that key information. Okay, so mobile access. Simon touched on this earlier, and this has been a really powerful tool for us at SGS, and kind of the mantra of kind of anytime, anywhere, any device has kind of been a key tool for us since the start of September. What we found kind of at the start of the year was many of our students were using the mobile application to complete work, to access Teams on their way to and from college. Lots of our learners travel a fair distance to get to us, so lots of time spent on public transport and trains. Learners were actually engaging in Teams during this journey. This graph here shows actually the engagement over the past 30 days. And we had a conversation. We expected this to drop in terms of actually the change from the use of mobile device. An assumption would have been that actually our learners would have gone from mobile device back to either a desktop or a laptop. But what we've seen is actually still over 3,000 learners are engaging on Microsoft Teams through an iOS device, which is really interesting to see. That how our learners are accessing Microsoft Teams, and that goes down kind of a credit to Microsoft itself in terms of the quality of the mobile application and kind of the tools that go alongside that. So that's really nice to see. So Teams meetings or webinars, as we like to call them at SGS, this has been our most powerful remote delivery tool. We've had really high attendance, and it also allows flexibility to our learners. A number of our learners are almost working on the front line in supermarkets, so they cannot access the live webinar content. But through recording webinars, it enables our learners to access that content in their own time and then pose questions from watching it after the event. What we've also found is actually, I know Jake and Simon have both talked about working smart and reducing staff work time. By recording the webinars, it saved time for our staff. Rather than doing screen recordings and recording presentations, it covered all bases, which was really nice to see. And our students and staff have loved them in terms of the engagement. It's the closest we can get to actually being in the classroom. Additionally to this is excitement to the new updates coming from Teams. So it's a case of watch this space. There's been lots and lots of updates, even over the past 6 weeks, in terms of things like change of backgrounds. And I know that hands up and kind of the more split screen options are coming to make it more teaching and learning friendly. So it's very much a case of watch this space in terms of that. And then in terms of just some general advice is to practice, practice, practice. I've come a long way in 6 weeks from my delivery, and that started by just myself practicing with a number of member of staff of, this is what I'm going to deliver tomorrow. Can we try it out before? Can we try it out beforehand and troubleshoot there? So that's a really nice tool to do. So definitely practice if you haven't done so already. Get in there and get in the environment and try some of the tools there. Some handy hints or some tips. Definitely record it. And like I said, in terms of engagement of actually, if we can, learners can access it, they can access it in their own time. Set your expectations. So one thing that a number of staff within our organisation do is they have a PowerPoint slide at the very start of the presentation, which details the expectations for the session. As a starting point, and this is where I started 6 weeks ago, is actually start with all mics muted. Okay, you can't get any background noise, and very much it's you delivering. Okay, and as you feel comfortable, you can pose direct questions, ask learners to turn mics on so conversation can then happen. But it's very much a case of feeling comfortable within the platform. Don't be afraid of silence. So give them time to actually think about it in the classroom. Students really respond well to actually having time to complete tasks. So make sure that we allocate time for them to complete tasks. Using a colleague for help is a really kind of nice tool to use. So I'm lucky enough to have an in-class support worker with me, and I very much ask if my screen's being shown, ask if my mic's working, so it's that reassurance from you. Asking other members of staff to join as well. So this is a really powerful tool, and this is probably more evident than ever that actually in almost real world talk, we can't go and see our colleagues teach as often as we want to, but actually within this platform and the time that we have, we can go into classroom, we can go into webinars, we can watch, we can bounce questions of each other. So don't be afraid to invite another member of staff in there to kind of infuse conversation. Use the chat feature within the webinar. I use this a lot in terms of posing questions. So before I go into delivery, what I do is I write down 7 questions which I know that I'm going to ask within that lecture. It saves me typing in real time. Use the app features to direct questions to learners. So if you think learners have just come in and literally they've just got their phone down and they're not paying attention, keep them engaged using the app features. Use of emojis for quick response. So if you want to check understanding really quickly, it's either give me a thumbs up or send me a ninja. That makes sense. Get people to stay behind. So at the end of your session, allow time for learners to stay behind, turn their microphones, turn their mics on and ask that question. And then finally is this double screen or use of the mobile app. So one of the limitations at the moment is actually if you're sharing your screen, you can't see the chat function. So either double screen so you can have share one of your screens, or have the mobile app open next to you so you're able to see the questions coming through. Assignments. Within assignments, what we've seen as an organisation is actually the shift from using assignments for summative assessment to more of a formative approach. We've given learners time to complete work and then feedback at the end of the day. So learners are getting real-time feedback on their work and almost mini submissions. Other tools that learners have really liked is actually some of the courses we deliver are quite practical. So within my field of sport and exercise science, learners have almost done Joe Wick style videos as assessments and being able to send them in using the Teams platform. Also, the use of forms has been a really nice and kind of impactful tool for learners to get instant feedback on checking for understanding. And then finally, as you as practitioners, is the use of the Insights tab to help monitor progress and time to see if learners are engaging in the work that you've set. And then finally, to kind of sum all that up, really, is actually the impact on students. Mobile access, like I said, that anywhere, anytime, any device. It's been increased engagement of learners, and almost for our learners, it's refreshed the learning experience. So it's actually something different as being sat in a classroom. It's more accessible for them in terms of, like I said, many of our learners on the front line working in supermarkets, for example, they've been able to access content and actually not missed out on the learning experience. We've been able to create bespoke learning experience for our students. So the ease of being able to communicate, pose questions has made it kind of improve that relationship between students and staff. And then finally, what we've done is we've changed the way of working moving forwards for students. So it's almost forced our hand into kind of the future of teaching and learning using digital technology. Thanks for listening. What I'll do is I'll hand you over back to Claire for any questions.
Thank you, Lee. I don't actually, as you say that story, I don't really feel that anyone's forced your hand. You know, the energy with which the three of you have shared your story at South Gloucestershire and Stroud is amazing. We have got hundreds of questions. So what I wanted to say is we will make sure that we respond to everybody who's asked a question. But given how tight we are on time, perhaps what I could say is, can Melody and Alan ask a best question each? You go first, Melody. Are you there?
Oh, that's a rough one. I'm gonna have to go through the list of them. Let's see. Oh, I did have a good one here. One sec. For Lee, how have you adapted teams for students with learning needs or disabilities, for example, if they're hearing impaired?
So what we've done is we've very much used the kind of accessibility tools within Microsoft and the Microsoft package. So for the likes of the use of Immersive Reader has been a really kind of impactful tool for our SEN learners, and there's plenty of helpful videos out there, especially within Microsoft, and some of the stuff at the MEC kind of outlines how to access that if you're not really sure. Also, that kind of bespoke one-to-one approach in terms of some of the tools in terms of kind of follow-up meetings with them in terms of one-to-one calls has been a really powerful tool in terms of that kind of line there.
Fantastic, thank you. And Alan, your best question?
Sure. There was a question about how you are marking work, checking for plagiarism, though that kind of idea around feedback, etc.
Yeah, so I can jump on this as well. So in terms of plagiarism, we at SGS College we use the Turnitin platform, and Turnitin is and plagiarism platforms is a kind of a whole different topic within itself. So we have two kind of routes in terms of that. So we have the plugin in terms of any assignment that's run through Teams, we can use the Turnitin plugin for that. Alongside that, we can use Turnitin as a separate. We use Turnitin as a separate browser in terms of the remote login to Turnitin. So that's how we check for plagiarism in terms of those two elements, I suppose.
Fantastic. I do regret that we can't go through more of the questions because there have been some really lovely conversations and exchanges in the chat window, but I promise we will get back to everybody. Thank you so much, Lee and Jake and Simon. And I need to wrap up the session as we come to the end of the hour, but I left this slide up for everyone because when you get the deck after the event, there are some really good links here, which will take you to some of the things that Simon and Jake and Lee spoke about in the session today. And there are some really good resources there, all on very friendly aka.ms links, which makes them easy to remember. So I hope those will help you too. And as we wrap up, I wanted to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for a fantastic session. The real world experiences that you've had over the last month or so, sharing those as well as you have done today will make a big difference, I know, to many people on the call today. So the Microsoft friends who work with you on the Showcase College program want to say thank you. And I've also had a message in from Sarah Jane Watkins, who's the principal of your college. And she says, can you please say thank you on behalf of the SGS College management team and mention how proud we are of the team and of their drive to make teams a success. Their determination to convince me that we would either evolve or die has been the reason that we've made such progress. I'm really proud of Simon, Jake and Lee today. So there's a message from Microsoft, there's a message from your own principal, and I'm sure I speak for all of the people in the audience with us today on the webinar when I say thank you so much for a great session. Good night, everyone.
We hope that you found today's information helpful. Lastly, your feedback is important. Please take a few minutes to let us know how we did by completing a short survey that will appear in your browser window shortly after the stream ends. You'll also find a link to a certificate of completion in the message panel. This will also be emailed to you after the event. As a reminder, you can access the event recording and the PowerPoint slides at the same location you joined today's event. I'd like to extend one last thank you to our presenters, Simon, Jake, and Lee, and of course to our host, Claire. This concludes today's event. You may now disconnect.